Shalom, truth seekers. So I was tired of tradition, and I I just saw so many different calendar interpretations popping up about, my goodness, it must have been about 6 or 7 years ago, and I went on a search for something about the calendar that was written. I mean, without a doubt, Genesis 1:14 tells us that the lights in the heavens were for times, but there's not much other information in the scriptures that tell us how these lights move or how do they keep time exactly. I did discover that the translation in the new moon is a biased translation, and it should be saying in the new month when you read that many times in the scriptures. So, I mean, eventually I discovered the book of Jude did quote Enoch, and I tested Enoch. I found the quote in the first part of Enoch, and it matched what was in Jude, and the I discovered the luminary sections of Enoch. And the first time I listened to the luminary section of Enoch, it went completely over my head. I didn't understand the significance. This was before my calendar search, I guess, when I first tested it. But later, when I started my calendar search, the search for the Creator's times, I remembered that the book of Enoch did have a section where it was talking about the sun. And so I mean, all the luminaries. And so I tested it again, and it made a little more sense the next time I read it. And it was interesting to see, the book of Enoch was talking about multiple, all of the lights in the heavens having different month cycles, a solar month, a lunar month, and a stellar month, like the stars and the constellations. So anyway, the foundation of my understanding of the Creator's times is definitely Genesis 1:14, but Enoch has been instrumental in just helping me to understand how those lights are moving. And I want to speak to some of the questions that might exist about the Enoch calendar nowadays. There are different people that claim they're following an Enoch calendar, and I'll talk more about that later at the end if I can remember. But I've seen some of the big Enoch calendar leaders choosing calendars that end up diverging from the witness of the heavenly luminaries, and they end up quoting a section of Enoch. I'm not looking at it right now, but later on, I think it's like chapter 82 or something, it talks something about like the luminaries eventually going kind of crazy and disobeying their orbits and their laws and stuff, and they use that as a reason to say that's why it doesn't really matter, and I'm gonna keep track of time this way. But I just want to say that my conviction is that we would be lost if those timepieces were not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, the book of Revelation says at one point there would be time no longer. And, we read in the kingdom of heaven, I think the sun, it says the sun isn't around because, the Father and the Son illuminate everything. And so, I mean, there's definitely a concept of time in Genesis 1:14 that was put into play. But, I mean, eventually that will come to an end, I think. But not yet, I don't think. I think we would be lost. Like, we would surely have no way to understand our Creator's times if Genesis 1:14 is held in doubt, because of what we read in that verse of Enoch, like 82 or whatever it is. And so, I mean, 119 Ministries has a video where they're debunking different parts of Enoch, and they do say the luminary section of the book of Enoch is possibly valid, and of course the part that Jude quotes. But, I mean, I'm not going to disagree that it seems like there may have been parts that were tampered with. And I don't know if even possibly within the book of Enoch, possibly this chapter or this verse that's talking about the luminaries being chaos, maybe was tampered with too. I'm not sure. I mean, things do kind of jump around in weird ways from the flow that seem to be occurring as you read through the luminary sections of Enoch and when you get to that point. So I don't know, but I do want to point out this word that I have highlighted here. And I mean, you'll see it more than once in the sections of Enoch that's actually talking about the sun and the moon and everything moving. And, it says they bring in all the years punctuously, so that they forever neither gain upon nor fall behind the fixed positions for a single day. And so that's where I'm standing on that right now. Like, it seems like there must be a contradiction between the later verse that talks about disorder among the luminaries, and maybe, I don't know, if I recall, memory serves me right, it was definitely talking about the moon and maybe the stars, but I don't know if it ever said the sun would disobey its orbit. But at any rate, I do want to point out, it says forever there, and it's kind of like the realization, that the instructions of the Almighty apply to all generations, like, it's a long time. Forever is one of those words that really jump out at you. So anyway, I do believe we would be lost. Like, you forget it. You're gonna have chaos, and don't forget that the lawless one would think to change times and laws, and you see that not just among the lawless, but who have, pagan holidays that replace the Creator's holy days. But I mean, even among those who have awakened, there are so many different versions of the calendars. And beware of the word calendar, a word that doesn't appear in the scriptures. Like, I'm talking about the Creator's times, and I use words like calendar and even the Enoch calendar to try and relate. But let us not lose focus of the Creator's times, his set times. In Genesis 1:14, he said he put the lights in the heavens for his set times, so they would be known. And so I'm concerned, even among the awakened brothers and sisters who choose to try and let these calendars run apart, independent from the witness of the heavenly luminaries. Like, so, I mean, and if the witness of the heavenly luminaries is wrong, like I said, I feel like we'd be lost, and I don't believe the Father would do that to his children. I do think there is a very good chance that there's translational work to verify consistency and accuracy that needs to be done for Enoch, and that's an ongoing work that I want to get more into, tracking down the source manuscripts and verifying what's going on, especially with some of those chapters talking about the moon. But the chapters and verses talking about the sun, I think, are pretty clear, and I think people they might be missing some subtle, important things. And I'm going to just talk briefly about those here as food for thought, and I will let the Ruach convict from there. So, yes, everyone is so fixated on the 364 that Enoch seems to talk about. But I think there are two things they need to realize. One is that he did talk about extra days. He talked about an overplus of days and the days that accrue. And also, the word stations is used to describe the 364 number. I'm going to jump around to a different translation here that I thought I had it pulled up. I don't have it pulled up. Look at that. Oh, wait, it's maybe on the next page here. I'll find it. Give me a moment. It's on the next page here. Aha, there it is. So, and depending on which version of Enoch you have, the chapters might jump around a little, but it's talking about the intercalary days, and owing to them men go wrong therein, for the luminaries truly render service on these stations. And it's talking about extra service, and the reckoning is wrong. Like, but the important thing I want you to zero in on here is it says, the exactness of the year is accomplished through its 364 stations. Not 364 days, but stations. Yes, the book of Enoch does talk about 364 days, but don't lose this, that it talks about 364 stations. And you have to understand the sun is moving. Obviously, it moves from the east to the west every day, and everyone sees that and very familiar with that. But probably most of you also remember back in elementary school when you learned that the the sun's subtle north-south shifting over the course of the year is what causes the solar seasons to occur. And these are positions that the sun sits in. Every day it shifts from one position to another position, slightly more north or slightly more south, depending on what time of year it was and which way it was going. But Enoch, I believe here, is talking about these positions, and he calls it stations. And over the course of the year, the sun is shifting between 364 different positions or stations. And so I mean that's important. That's an important thing to grasp. There are 364 different positions that the sun sits in, and you have to realize, in order for everyone on Earth to see the sun in those 4 different positions, there is an overlap of time. Don't give up if you're the person who tried to plug this into a spreadsheet and you're counting numbers and you're just searching for how can I turn 364 into 365. There are extra days. There are days that accrue. There's an overplus of days, and Enoch talks about this. And but it's necessary and it's needed in order for the sun to run its race. Check out my video, Luminary Time is Not Clock Time. Like, the sun needs to move more in order for everyone on Earth to see the full luminary cycle. Like, if you start the stopwatch and the clock is ticking and the sun starts to create a solar day cycle for one person on Earth, the sun, say it's someone in North America. The sun starts on somewhere on the east coast of North America, and it rises. Let's start in the morning. It rises, and then they have daylight, and the sun goes all the way around, and then they have night, and the sun returns. And as it returns, the new solar day begins for that person. But what about the person to the west of the person in the United States? What about the person who is all the way in like Japan or Europe? Like, their sunrise, their solar day, their luminary time did not start until the sun, it had to travel all the way across the United States and across the ocean before they could see sunrise. And that is when their time started. And I mean, if you follow that progression around the Earth, you keep traveling west looking at when the luminary day begins for different people around the Earth, you will see that there is actually, in a nutshell, it does take approximately 48 hours, if not a little more, for everyone on Earth to be able to see a solar day, a full solar day, from sunrise to sunrise the next day, or sunset to sunset, depending on what your understanding is. But it still takes clock time. It takes, I believe, it's the missing gap. You can very easily see that it's approximately 48 hours, but I think it's even a little more, because the person at the start and the person at the end of that cycle, different locations on Earth. So we started in the United States, so take someone who's just to the west of where that time started. I mean, I lost my train of thought. But the sunrises and sunsets would overlap slightly right in that region. Like, the person to the right of where time began would need sunset to go a little more to the west, and then the person at the beginning of time would need to see the sunrise a little bit to the east. So there's an overlap right kind of at the what I'm calling the Creator's International Dateline, because man-made International Dateline is not real. And I wish, I wish I could show this better. I wish I was better at graphical design. I'm challenged this year with my technology, so I'm only able to kind of talk through it this year. But if you check out some of my other videos in time past, I think one of the important ones to check out would be how many hours are in a Sabbath day, because that's just an example where I'm trying to get people to realize, how much, put yourself in the shoes of the Creator looking on the earth, or in the shoes of the sun looking on the earth, and how much clock time actually ticks in order for everyone to experience their full solar, luminary time. A solar day, whether you're sunrise to sunrise or sunset to sunset, it's still a solar day, and the Creator ends up spending close to 48 plus hours each week, spending the weekly Sabbath with his creation. People don't really realize that, but so there is this overplus of time, and it works out, and I think Enoch talks about that, and now we're gonna look at that real quick, if I can remember where I was. Here, look and see. Okay, and this is just finished up, I think, talking about in meticulous detail the tracking of the sun for the solar year, and I think it talked a little bit about the moon. But then it says here, the overplus of the sun and the stars amount to 6 days in 5 years. And it goes on here, but focus on this. And look at this separately too. This is, and like I said, I think there's some translational work that needs to be done to verify accuracy and consistency, and I'll show you in this other version of Enoch how there's speculation, the source texts vary on what's going on here. And don't forget that punctuation was, it's only a recent invention. So like this semicolon that seems to split this concept from this concept might not have been there. This concept might have been directly, and I think it is directly associated with this, because this next phrase here, 6 days in 30, every year come to 30 days. I don't think, someone please comment in the description if they think they understand what that's talking about. If you focus on just this, what is this talking about? 6 days in each year, because I think, and I'll show you in the other translations, that it just varies, and I think this is just some speculation on the translator, even the transcribers or the people who copied the source text. I wonder if they're wondering if they, they clearly do disagree on different source texts, and I'll show you that in the other version here. But anyway, if you just focus on this part, and the overplus of the sun and the stars amounts to 6 days in 5 years. If you take 6 days and divide it by 5 years, that comes out to 1.2 days per year. And if you add that to the 364, that you get very, very, very close to the 365.24-ish days that modern science is claiming nowadays. And I have other videos, I think it's called Days That Accrue and Overplus of Days. Search those phrases with my YouTube channel name, Faith Child, and you'll find those videos. But I discuss how, modern science has been trying to refine time, and they are constantly, even resyncing all of our watches now to make up for the minor seconds that they're losing and gaining, because their methods for keeping time they just can't compare with the Creator's awesome luminary cycles. But with the Julian calendar before the Gregorian calendar, they realized they had too much time. I forget what it was, but then they made the calculation and they adjusted it. It's been tweaked. Like, it might have been 364.25 at one point, then they thought they had to refine it to 0.24, and then they start saying things like, the dams around the world and the water being dammed up here is causing time to slow down by 2-3 seconds every. So there's this fudging, and I think there's this refining, and there's this control over time, but I think it's very, very close like, I forget what it is, but I think we're talking about like 1 hour in a year difference for I think for the difference between what this works out to and what modern science is claiming. So I wouldn't be surprised if modern science was wrong. But yeah, that's my current understanding. It's luminary time is not clock time, and I believe what Enoch talks about is still valid. I feel we would be lost if the luminaries went amok. You could just throw Genesis 1:14 out the window, and I can't do that yet. I'm definitely a diligent truth seeker, and I'm open to test all things, but I can't do that yet. Like Genesis 1:14 has been pretty solid for me. And so I do believe the lights are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, kind of like this verse says here, forever. And so yeah, to show you, so here is the verse in this version of Enoch, where it talks about the overplus. The gain of the sun and the stars turn out to be 6 days and 5 years. So remember, the punctuation just doesn't need to be there. But look at this next phrase. 6 days every year adds up to 30 days, and they've got this little M tacked on the end of that. So you go down and you look at the M here, and it says manuscript B said it the way they wrote it up above, but manuscripts C and A say it this way. And so, I mean, it's just, and I've seen this ever since I began searching deeper into Enoch. That was one of the first things I started zeroing in on, was this section, and I noticed that different versions were saying all kinds of different things here, and they're trying to make it, bend it to fit like the lunar cycle, like 10 days every year come to 30 days in 3 years, 50 days in 5 years, 80 days in 8 years, and trying to mish and match it together. But I don't think you can do that with the numbers that we see. Like these numbers, I don't think they line up. I don't think they're holding water. And I think this does potentially answer the question of what's going on with the time. And so it's not that Enoch was saying it was a 364-day calendar. And now I'm coming back to the point that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. You know, I don't believe that the book of Enoch has a calendar. I use the phrase Enoch calendar because I know people relate to that. But I mean, I see a calendar in Leviticus 23. All I see in Enoch is him talking about how the luminaries are working, which you don't have to take him for gospel. You can go out and measure what the luminaries are doing for yourself. All Enoch is doing is putting Genesis 1:14 into action. And so again, I guess I just want to wrap up by saying I would encourage you not to let your calendar get away from the witness of the heavenly luminaries. Like, I encourage you, Genesis 1:14 is key, and you know, people are trying to make all these adjustments, and I'll just say briefly, I do not believe, I'm not convinced that the Qumran community understood Enoch properly either. I think they realized the book of Enoch was an important book. You find it in their library amongst with all their other books, some of which contain doctrines that our Savior debunked. And I will be needing to continue my series on that. I know the enemy has been keeping me from it, but I'm going to be continuing my series on that, because even he would think to change times and laws, and if it was possible, he would deceive the very elect. And I see, and I feel it. I see it. I'm convicted, and so I will be sharing, but I want to encourage you, like when I say Enoch calendar, I'm just trying to relate to you, but I do not see what I am describing to you in harmony but with a lot of the calendar doctrines that are coming out of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I don't see it, any kind of intercalation, any kind of adjustment or tweaking of man, whatever hundreds of ways they've come up to try and do that. All calendars of men are striving to stay in sync with the natural beautiful seasonal cycle. And yes, I do believe the seasonal cycle is an increment of time for those who would try to say it's not. It certainly is. And, it's the same as a solar year. That's an increment of time. It's the same as a solar month. That's an increment of time. Solar day is an increment of time. A solar season is also an increment of time. And I believe that is the natural yearly seasonal cycle for anyone who thinks a solar calendar has any value. That is your benchmark. And I encourage you, don't allow the Creator's times to slip from the witness of the heavenly luminaries. Like, there is an answer, I believe. It does all make sense. But again, it's not for me to beat people over the head. It's for me to speak the conviction that he put upon my heart, and I will allow him to do the rest from there on your hearts. So with that said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at a voice of truth and love at gmail.com. And shalom, and may Abba bless as you continually seek out his truth in love with a pure heart.